Okay, we're live.
Okay. Welcome everyone to the Tuesday, July 20th, 2021 Planning Commission meeting. We will start with Pledge of Allegiance led by Vice Chair Tori Keene, and if everybody can mute themselves while I do this.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Tori. Annette, can we have a roll call, please?
Yes, Commissioner Anderson.
Present.
Commissioner Carranza. Commissioner Hughes.
Present.
Commissioner McIntyre is absent. Commissioner Schmidt, I don't see. I believe he is absent. And Vice Chairperson Keene.
Here.
And Chairperson Vanden Eyck.
Here.
So we have 5 present. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, can I get a motion for the approval of the agenda?
I so move.
I will second.
I actually had one thing to ask Mariah on the agenda. It looked like there was just a tweak that needed to be made for who the property owner was for the item tonight versus the green paper on the very back of it. It looked like the architect versus the property owner name got switched. That was
Let me take a look.
the only thing I thought I saw that looked inconsistent.
Let's see.
Like, I don't think the architect is the property owner.
Where did you see that in the agenda?
For the item tonight.
Yeah, on the
when
draft resolution, it says the San Luis Obispo Nonprofit Housing Corporation is the owner.
That's
I
correct.
see. Yes,
Right.
you're right. Yeah, the project in brief does say it's Eris Studio Architects. They're part of the applicant team, but you're right. The project is, or the property is owned by the Housing Authority of San Luis Obispo. So,
Okay, yeah, that was the only correction I thought I saw.
yeah,
I
thank
see
you.
that. I see that. Yeah. I see that.
Good catch.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and we'll do a roll call for approval of the agenda with that correction.
Yep.
Was it the first from Commissioner Anderson? I think I missed that.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. Okay, so Commissioner Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Carranza,
Yes.
Commissioner Hughes,
Yes.
Vice Chairperson Keene,
Yes.
and Chairperson Vanden Eyck.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
This part of the meeting is reserved for persons wanting to address the commission on subjects that are not on the agenda over which the commission has jurisdiction. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes. Please state your name for the record before making your presentation. The commission may take action to direct staff to place the matter of business on a future agenda. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to make a public comment on something that is not already on the agenda? And if you are, if you please raise your hand. And if you're on the phone, I don't see anybody on the phone, but if you were on the phone, you'd do *9.
Right, *9. I do not see anybody with their hand raised.
Okay, don't see anybody for public comment, so we'll close that. We'll move to the consent calendar. And if I can get a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Leah's Victoria. Did you?
Sure.
I'll move.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner Carranza,
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Hughes,
Yes.
Vice Chairperson Keen,
Yes.
Chairperson Vanden Eyck.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
So then we'll go ahead and move into the public hearings for each of the following items. The public will be given the opportunity to speak. After a staff report, the chair will open the public hearing and invite the applicant or applicant's representative to make any comments. Members of the public will be invited to provide testimony to the commission following the applicant. Speakers should state their name for the record and can address the commission for 3 minutes. After all public comments have been received, the public hearing will be closed and the commission will discuss the item and take appropriate actions. Before we move on to item number 2, are there any ex parte? Let's start with Jason.
No ex parte.
Victoria.
Yes, I did reach out to both the property owner and the architects, but I was only able to talk to the housing authority, and we just discussed a little bit of the decision-making process and their plans.
Okay. Tori.
No ex parte.
And Randy.
No ex parte.
And I saw this item when it came to the DRC. But other than that, nothing. So who's giving our presentation today? Is it Mariah?
Would be me. Yes, let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay, is it working?
Yes.
Great, so thank you. Yes, this is a conditional use permit amendment for the Empire Apartments. They're expanding at 5880 Ardea Avenue. That's actually a quick correction. I believe in a couple places it referred to Ardea Road, but it's actually Ardea Avenue. So just to clarify that, the project number is AMND 21-0054. Sorry. Okay. So here's a zoning map. The property itself is about 1 acre. It's 1.1 acres in the high density residential zoning district, or residential multifamily 24, which is 24 units per acre. To the east is also RMF 24. To the west is residential single family zoning district. And then to the north, there's Ardea Avenue and then Highway 101. Here's just a little bit of a better aerial. You can see where the existing driveway is and then the existing building, which we'll talk about. A little bit of background about the site. It is currently developed with a multifamily building with a total of 13 units, which includes 1 manager's unit. The makeup of the building has 1 studio, 11 one-bedroom units, and then a 3-bedroom manager's unit. The project was presented to the Design Review Committee on March 11th, 2021. And in addition to talking about the design, some of the big discussions were about the parking constraints and the accessibility for residents, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So the project being proposed is to add a 2nd story onto the existing building. The 2nd story would have a total of 19 units, making 32 units total on the property. The 19 new units would consist of 11 studio units and 8 one-bedroom units, but the first floor, the unit configuration would stay the same. The project also includes the addition of a new community building with a little bit of storage, as well as a courtyard for the residents to use. Some other changes are some upgrades to the parking lot to modify for accessibility, as well as a fire truck turnaround. And this also includes moving the trash enclosure. So to talk about the density, as I'd mentioned, this is a residential multifamily 24 lot, allowing 24 units per acre. So the zoning allows for a maximum density of 27 units on this property. However, the state law allows projects with at least 20% of units affordable to receive a density bonus. So with this density bonus, the maximum density allowed on this property is 36 units, which the 32 units being proposed falls within. A conditional use permit is required for all multifamily developments of 12 units or more. So that's why this is coming before you tonight. This is also amendment because in 1991, the Housing Authority of San Luis Obispo, who is still the operator today, they obtained a conditional use permit that converted an existing motel that was there into these low-income apartments. So here we can see the site's existing design. As I'd mentioned, this was previously a motel. This was built in the 1960s and then later converted to apartments by Haslow. So you can see it's kind of this L-shaped building with the existing parking lot. There's a gazebo down at the bottom that's proposed to be removed. And then you can see where the existing driveway is right now, and that'll be utilized with the new development or with the new addition. So adding a second story to the building increases the height from 9.5 feet tall to 22.5 feet tall. Again, the first floor would continue to have the 13 units. The manager's unit and laundry facility would be reconfigured a little bit, but they would stay largely the same. And then the new second story again would have 19 new units. Since the project is 100% affordable, the state code allows for the applicant to request up to 4 concessions or exceptions to the city's requirement, which the applicant has requested some exceptions, which we'll talk about. So here's the proposed site plan. You can see the building is, it's the same configuration as it is today. They're just adding a second story. The parking, you can see it's getting a little bit wider to allow for just a better parking design and better driving for cars, basically. The new community building at the bottom is being proposed, and then the new courtyard's right next to it. And then you can also see the new trash enclosure that's right next to that. As I'd mentioned before, that driveway is going to continue to be utilized, but they are adding a new access for fire trucks to use, and this would just be used for emergency vehicles. So the applicant is proposing to add some removable bollards there, so to ensure that it would just be used by emergency vehicles and not by everyday drivers. So again, to talk about the architecture of the building, since it was an old motel built in the 60s, it encompasses this strong mid-century modern architectural style. This can be seen in the simplicity of the building, the flat roofs, the clean lines of the windows, the doors, and the walkway features. And the existing color palette is pretty simple, consisting of white and green with stone veneers along the walls lining the walkways. The second story matches what's basically there today. It just freshens up the building. The applicant is proposing some slanted roof lines to add more architectural interest and also act as an overhang for the second floor exterior walkway. So here's a better look at that architecture and design. I think the colors on my computer look a little gray, but those darker colors, the P2 and P3, are muted green colors. So it would basically stick with a light gray and green color scheme with black doors with that long rectangular window, which also encompasses that mid-century modern design. The wood slat features on the second story match what's there on the first story right now, and then the existing stone veneer along the walkway would remain. So this is the design of the new community building. You can see it matches the proposed residential building perfectly. And this is just a picture of the new trash enclosure. It would have CMU walls with the green doors that would match or complement the existing and proposed design of the building. So now moving on to parking, this was one of the bigger discussion items that the design review committee had back in March. The existing parking lot has 18 parking spaces, and the applicant is actually proposing to reduce this down to 15 spaces. This would account for increasing accessibility. I believe it would add a new accessible parking space, and then it would include the new fire truck turnaround. The state density bonus law sets a maximum parking ratio for projects providing affordable units. So when projects include affordable units, there's only so many parking spaces that the city can actually require. So per the state law, the city can require a maximum of 33 parking spaces. And so obviously the 15 that the applicant's proposing is a pretty far reduction from this 33. So this is one of the concessions that they're requesting in accordance with the density bonus law I'd mentioned earlier. And here's just a table outlining the parking and the ratios being requested. So the Atascadero Municipal Code requires a total of 56 parking spaces for a project such as this. With the maximum density bonus requirements from the state, again, we can require up to 33, and then the applicant is proposing 15. So this is a pretty big reduction, but after talking to the owner and operator, which is Haslow, and going to the site ourselves, or Haslow has mentioned that many of the residents, the population of the residents there don't really drive. So the current parking demand is fairly low. Going out there to the site a few times as staff, we kind of witnessed the same thing. The few times we went out, the parking lot was about 50% full during the daytime. The design review committee did talk about increasing or incentivizing some biking for residents to be able to bike and have a place to store those bikes. So the applicant did add 2 new bicycle parking racks. One of these has 8 spaces and the other one has 6 for a total of 14 spaces. And then staff has also added a condition that the applicant provide a parking management plan that can justify the low parking ratio. Basically, this is just to ensure that the parking is not going to be an issue and that they're going to make residents aware ahead of time before they move in, you know, what the parking situation is. And I believe the plan is to assign spaces to certain units. So in talking about the parking and access, Atascadero is a little bit unique because we are limited in our neighborhood parking opportunities when compared to other cities. We don't have a lot of on-street parking in a lot of areas. However, the city would need to provide substantial evidence for the denial of this request for reduced parking because the state law requires a parking study when you're denying a parking reduction. Another thing that the design review committee talked about in terms of access to the site, there is a lot of foot traffic coming through the adjacent properties to the east. And so one thing to discourage people from crossing over the adjacent properties is to build a new 6-foot fence along that property line that would just basically delineate the properties and discourage people from, I guess, illegally crossing those adjacent properties. So the applicant has proposed this on their new site plan, and then we've proposed a condition to be added that this fence be added prior to requesting a final planning exception. So moving on to landscaping, approximately 41% of the site is proposed to be landscaped, which is well above the minimum 25% that's required by the municipal code. The municipal code does require a minimum of 10% of parking areas to be landscaped and that shade trees be provided a certain number of parking spaces away. Another requirement is that the code requires trash enclosures to be landscaped, as well as street trees to be added along the frontage, and a minimum 5-foot landscape strip within side yard setbacks. These are difficult to meet on this site because the site is already built out. Adding some of these landscape requirements could result in the reduction to the already reduced parking or the number of units that the applicant is able to build. So staff has made a finding to allow an exception to this, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So we're recommending no changes to the proposed landscape plan, which we can see here. A lot of the site around near the adjacent property lines is pretty open and has just some grassy kind of vegetation. And so the new vegetation being added would be primarily around the parking lots and within the courtyards and walkway areas. So moving on to the multifamily standards, the municipal code requires 10 cubic feet of enclosed storage per unit. That doesn't include closet space, as well as 9,600 square feet of open space, which can be provided in a shared location. So the applicant is proposing 1 bedroom closet per unit. Unit 3, which is the manager's unit, has slightly more. As far as the open space, the new courtyard would be about almost 900 square feet. The existing courtyard between the building is about 1,250 square feet, and then there's individual downstairs patios. So these don't quite meet the requirements of the municipal code. So these are two more of the concessions that the applicant is requesting with their density bonus. Staff is in support of this, again, due to the existing layout and the steep topography of the site. Additional storage and open space would also likely result in a loss of units or more extensive grading. So here's some elevations of the proposed project, which we looked at a little bit earlier, but you can see it matches what's there today. It's just getting taller. And it would be, again, up to about 21.5 feet. On the top picture there, you can see the slanted roofs facing inward toward that inner courtyard area. And then the back would just be pretty simple with the windows on the back there. Here's some finished floor plans. This is the first floor, which is existing. The second floor you can see is quite a few more units, some smaller units. And this is the proposed community space for the residents to utilize. Here's some site photos from the property. The first one, this is kind of when you're looking toward Ardea Avenue. The bottom one is a little bit of a picture of the manager's unit / laundry facility, as well as the courtyard in the middle there. The top picture is the existing gazebo that's to be removed, and then the bottom picture is the area of the proposed community building. The conditions of approval are within the staff report, but if you have any questions, feel free to ask. The project qualifies for a Class 2 categorical exemption from CEQA for the construction of an infill development. Going back to the landscape exception finding, the municipal code does allow the Planning Commission to grant an exception to landscaping if the finding can be made that existing vegetation, topography, or the structural arrangement preclude the need for landscaping. And we believe this can be met since the site is already developed and it does have some significant topography. So staff's recommendation is that the Planning Commission adopt the draft resolution approving the amendments to the previous conditional use permit, allowing the addition of 19 units to the existing apartment building for a total of 32 units, consistent with the previously approved projects based on findings and subject to these conditions of approval. As always, the Planning Commission can approve modifications to the project. The commission can determine that more information is needed and refer this item back to staff, or the commission can deny the permit. And staff is available for questions.
Thank you, Mariah. Let's open it up for staff questions. Tori, you have something?
I have a question. After reading some of the concerns in the letters, which you'll read later, they want to put in that driveway extension to the like north west, I guess it is, for just the fire trucks. But why do it just for the fire trucks? Why not make that the new driveway? Because it seems like it would have better like turning, or you could see better on the road for when you're turning out of the development. Because right now the driveway like sort of goes in a direction and it's hard to see the other way.
Yeah, let me pull up a picture here.
Mariah, related to that, has the applicant submitted any like profiles of that? The slopes are really steep through there, so I'm curious at how they're going to accommodate that drive right there.
Yeah, so the applicant, we did go back and forth with them on that slope, and they did confirm, I can't remember, Kelly, do you recall what the slope was? Our fire chief, he took a look at it and he confirmed that the slope met the fire truck standards. I think the idea is that it's not exactly the best approach for everyone to be using. It's kind of a sharp left turn there, and then it is still a pretty steep driveway. So I think that's the reason. And then having two open driveways, you know, gets kind of confusing. So I think that's the reason for keeping the existing driveway and then adding this one just for fire truck access or emergency access, I suppose.
Oh, sorry. Can you go, can you show the like Google image of the map? Yeah, that one. Okay, so can we, I hate to do this, but that tree that's right there, could we have them cut that down for better viewing and have them maybe, I don't think they would need to put more landscape somewhere else, but it just seems like a really bad blind corner. I've driven down that road a few times and people do speed up to that intersection. So I'm just, since we have an opportunity to do something about it, I'm just kind of wondering what our options are.
Or are you referring to the tree in the right of way right there?
Yep, that one right there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think what we could do is add a condition that the city engineer review the site distance out of the existing driveway, and
Okay.
And that they implement any recommendations that he has for vegetation removal.
Okay. Because if we are going to increase the traffic there, then I think that we need to take that into account and make sure that people can get in and out of that driveway safely. That's it for me.
Jason?
Thank you, Tori. I don't see any pedestrian walkways, any sidewalks or anything along the road. So I'm kind of confused. Is the people who live here, if they don't drive, they ride bikes or walk, but that's kind of a precarious road to be walking along the side of the road like that. Is there any plans for putting in sidewalks in that area?
So yeah, that's actually a good point that I forgot to mention in the presentation. That was another big topic of the design review committee, was the typically a project like this would trigger sidewalks according to our municipal code. However, because of the topography and existing design of the site, basically we can't really force the neighbor over here to add sidewalks unless they were to trigger them. So then this project triggering sidewalks, was determined by the city engineer to really not add too great of a community benefit because of the location of the existing driveway. And then, can you see my mouse?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Just, I didn't know if I was pointing at nothing. And then for a sidewalk to be added right here, and then for the new driveway, and then a little bit of sidewalk to be added here,
Yeah.
because this is a single family zoning district, so they're not going to trigger frontage improvements. So basically they would kind of be building a sidewalk to nowhere. So unless this property were to build sidewalks, these are probably not going to really do much.
Now that property is owned by St. Williams.
This is
Or-
owned by a private person. It's
Okay.
single family residence.
Okay. And there, I've seen that before where they, they do trigger that sidewalk and there's like 50 feet of sidewalk in the middle of nowhere. It's just kind of someday, the road to nowhere. So
Sorry, I did also want to mention that I know, and probably applicant can speak or the owner can speak better to this, but their residents do use a lot of transit. A number of times when we've been up there on a site visit, there are a lot of transit vans and those kind of things coming in. So I don't know it's so much that a lot of the residents are walking. They're just sort of using public transit opportunities.
Okay. That was another question I had is it the housing authority deems who becomes tenants? Is it like specifically for a specific type of tenant in order to qualify for these transit buses and stuff like that? Because they come right into the facility, correct?
Yes, I've seen them go right into the facility. And I think when the applicant hops on during that time, I know that they do run certain facilities differently and have sort of different residents that live in each one to help, support their needs. So they can probably answer the types of clients that live in this facility.
Okay. I'm just concerned, doubling the capacity, I'm all for studio apartments. If it wasn't for studio apartments, I would have been homeless after college. So it's a cheap way to get by until you get enough money to get a nicer apartment. So I love studio apartments, but doubling the capacity of the unit and then having additional foot traffic in that area, I don't know, because it is kind of high traffic or high speed traffic along that road. I don't know if anybody's driven down the road, and to have pedestrian traffic, that's concerning, especially bicycle traffic, increasing that. So chime in, anybody else. I'm just trying to answer some questions on this. Are there the other question I
have something to piggyback off of, Jason.
Sure.
Yeah, it's more of a dialogue to your comments. It's, looking at like our three options, we can obviously deny, but we'd have to come up with some substantial evidence of like why. We could approve it as is, or we can say we'd like to have further research done. And it looked like the only thing that we could do that seems what you're getting at is there's not enough like around walkability or some kind of assessment. I know it looked like in Mariah's report, like a parking assessment be done or something like that. That's not really, I don't know. It's just whether or not we think they've fully fleshed out if this is going to work, having 15 parking spaces and no sidewalk. And I know the design review committee, it looks like they were able to make comments to where the applicant increased 15 bike racks, but bike racks are one thing, but it's not necessarily sufficient enough. So
yeah,
And
I'm not
on
sure.
that same note, especially with putting up that 6-foot wall between the parking or the apartment building in St. Williams, while I completely understand why they want to do that, it cuts down that path to be able to walk down the back of it to get to someplace that's more walkable rather than walking down Ardea. So
Yeah. If they're using that, then that's the path of least resistance. It's supposed to be harder.
right.
Yeah.
And then I have, and I'm not sure exactly why people are not driving, and are they aged out of having a license? Then they probably wouldn't be riding a bike anyway. So.
well, the
I'm just-
applicant, like Kelly said, will talk, but when I did speak with them earlier today, it was around like the majority of the people who live there now are special needs adults.
Okay.
And so that was kind of why the cohort like doesn't necessarily drive.
Okay.
But I was also asking about that too, because I was like, well, would bike racks even be a thing if you have 80-year-olds primarily living there? And he goes, oh, no, we have a different cohort of people living there. And this is, you know, they're fully fit and able to bike.
There we go. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Any other questions for staff? Okay, I'm going to open it up for the public hearing and invite anybody. We'll first invite the applicant's representative to make a presentation to us if they would like, and then we'll open it up to the public. So we have the applicants online.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and let in Scott Smith, Michael Burke, and Adriana Cook.
So if the applicant or their applicant representative would like to speak to the planning commission, you will need to unmute.
I think we're good.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you for having us and considering our proposal this evening. And my name is Scott Smith. I'm the executive director of Haslow, and we also have our architect with us this evening, and she's going to really talk about any technical aspects of it. So I'm going to just be brief, and I'll turn it over to her. And then we have Michael Burke, who's our head of all of our development and construction. But we're really excited to be here this evening because we're bringing you what we think is really good news, being able to add some affordable housing to the city of Atascadero. And obviously, that's something that everybody would like to see happen kind of broadly, but it's very rare. It's extremely difficult to produce. So as a result, you see the severe housing crisis that we have now. And and if we don't start thinking out of the box on ways to solve the situation, it's obviously going to just keep getting worse. So one thing I wanted to mention regarding this is that the Empire Inn, it consists of the 13 housing units now, and we go to the 33. But it's, as was discussed a little tonight, it's kind of important to take a look at how it's actually operating. And we've been operating it for very close to 30 years now, since I think 1991, and so we sort of know the kind of clients and how it functions and what the needs are, and so we feel very confident in the expansion and the parking ratios and so on. But and as so was already mentioned, it's pretty much 100% occupied by what we classify as special needs households, and we do control who moves into the housing and who does not. And of course, they have to income qualify. They have to be low income. But if they don't fit the needs of that property, like if there's too many cars, then we don't rent to them. But that hasn't been the case. We do a lot of placements through referrals. Just to give you one example, 3 of the apartments right now are leased to Transitions Mental Health Association, to fairly high functioning clients of their own that need independent living. And Transitions then provides support services, which includes some transportation services. So we don't believe that there's going to be a super big traffic increase or a big parking impact. As it was mentioned, what I'm told by our property management staff is that there's about approximately 5 vehicles that are owned by clients or renters at the site right now. And so it is functioning at about a half a space per unit already, and has been like that for, like I said, for decades. So we don't feel like we're proposing something that's not that's not realistic based on real data, operating experience, but also based on our ability to manage it and control it into the future. And I was going to mention as well that by going to the 32 units, it's going to give us the ability then to actually have a resident manager type person there, a caretaker, and that's going to help with the management as well. I wanted to just mention 2 or 3 quick technical points. First, we've been operating the existing units there as affordable housing for the 30 years that I mentioned, but it's important for the city to know, I guess, that there is no deed restriction or affordability agreement or anything else. So it could convert at any time. It could be sold at market. It could be converted to non-affordable, which we would care about, and it's not our intention. But the reason I'm mentioning it is that this is going to give the city a good opportunity by going to the 32 units. As part of the financing of those 32 units, you're not only going to bring those existing 13 into your permanent deed restricted affordable housing stock, you're going to be getting all 32. And what that's going to help with is most importantly, it's going to help with your affordable housing shortage, but it's also going to help you meet your general plan goals, because right now you've got your regional housing needs goals in your housing element, and you've adopted those, and so you've got this program, and you're going to be trying to meet those over the next few years. Well, you're going to go from 0 right now to 32 on this site. So I just wanted to mention that. I think that's a really great benefit for the city. And second, I just wanted to mention with respect to that density bonus law and the 35% density bonus that we could ask for, that density bonus law was actually revised a little over a year ago, and it's not 35%, it is 80% now for projects that are 100% affordable, which we are. So we could be asking for 100% density bonus. We're not even asking for the 35. We're only asking for 5 units beyond what the base density maximum is at the 27. And then lastly, just with respect to parking again, before the density bonus law was revised to go to this 80%, it used to prescribe 0.3 parking spaces per apartment for these special needs type units that we're talking about. 0.3, not even 0.5. So, and that got taken out with the revision, but mostly the point of taking it out was to give more flexibility, because in some of the really urban projects, they were saying, look, we've got great transportation systems. We don't even need that. So it was in recognition, though, of the fact that these types of occupancies just don't use a lot of parking. And then we're excited about the design. We think the carrying forward of that mid-century modern is kind of a cool idea, and it preserves a tradition. And but most of all, we're excited about being able to provide some additional housing to the city's really most vulnerable population, those that are on fixed incomes and have some special challenges. With respect to transportation services, yes, those are getting utilized. As I mentioned, TEAM is one of those sources. Our intention is to expand those. I'm told that the city has a dial-a-ride program. I'm not sure if that still is in existence, but we'd be very happy to work with them closely to coordinate that, and maybe even see if we were able to subsidize some of the trips that residents made on using those kinds of services. And we're here for any questions. And with that, I'm just going to turn it over to Adriana, who's with Aris Studio Architects and has done a great job in designing this project, we believe. So thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Adriana from Aris. And Mariah, I don't know if it's possible for me to share my screen.
Yeah, let's see. Are you able to now?
Yes. See? Yeah, okay. So I'm just going to give an overview. Maria's done a great job already, but so I will be brief on anything that kind of overlaps. Just a little zoom out of this site area too. We are close to 101, but we're also very close to El Camino. So the walking and the biking is convenient, as we've kind of already noted. This picture down here shows the driveway off of Ardea and how it is a steep sloping site, just so we're all on the same page. This will be 100% affordable for rent, owned by Haslow and managed, located near El Camino and Traffic Way, close to transportation and amenities. We're adding a second story over the existing 13-unit building, increasing the total number of units from 13 to 32. We're also adding a new community building for residents. Per the state density bonus law, the city is required to provide 4 incentives or concessions. And we are requesting, as Mariah had mentioned already, the reduced parking, reduced open space, and reduced indoor storage. This is the existing site. And this is the proposed. So this is the entire area that we are putting a second story over to gain the new units. This is the new community building over here. This is the new courtyard, and then this is an existing courtyard that already exists. And each unit on the ground floor also already has kind of like a patio with planters. And the parking was modified mainly for accessibility. Like for all the units, we have some disabilities, and we want to just, meet code requirements, but also tend to those that live in these units. And so we have an accessible aisle, which wasn't there before. You would have to go into the parking drive aisle. So that's what shifted these parking stalls down. And then we also have actual accessible stalls with the appropriate drive aisle. This also allowed for the fire truck turnaround that wasn't there currently. And then this is the new fire access as previously mentioned. We've also added the bike parking and the 6-foot fence. These are just images showing the second story on top, the community building. And that is it. And I will also be available for questions as well.
Thank you very much. Commissioners, any questions of the applicant? I have one, Adriana. I'm following up on one of the questions previously. I didn't see any profiles or anything of the fire access road or any slopes. Just curious about that.
Yeah,
That slope seems really steep.
It is steep.
Wasn't sure if you were going to have to adjust the entire driveway.
It will be a small portion and there will be retaining walls. I do have, let me see, I think I only shared that specific thing. So I share my whole screen. So this is the profile of that driveway. So it is very steep. And this was the existing profile, as you can see. So it's extensive work here. And I did not follow up with Walsh Engineering prior to this meeting, but I do believe we are abandoning after looking closer. because of how much regrading we are doing. And I apologize, Mariah, for not looking at that before this meeting.
It looks way different.
That would make sense, and it would actually improve the sight distance from what I can see there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was curious as to how that was going to happen, because the steepness of the grade, it didn't seem like you could have that other drive.
Right. Yes. Yeah, the dashed line here is the existing, as you can zoom in a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's
It's still
quite different. Still steep. Yeah.
Still quite steep, but yeah, still within the allowable. I see.
Instead of doing the jump up there.
Yep. Okay. Randy, did you have questions?
Yeah, actually, I understand that this is geared towards more like special needs. Are there going to be any situations where someone might need a caretaker, or are you guys kind of more just filtering that out in the process of when you're deciding who to rent to?
I'm going to let Haslow comment on that.
Scott, would you mind chiming in on that? If you're trying to talk, you're muted.
I don't have any controls on my computer, so I think you guys have to unmute me maybe somehow. But can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, good. Okay. So, with respect to caretakers, well, we don't, let's see. We wouldn't deny somebody, but the caretaker, it's very unusual to have a caretaker that would live at the unit. There might be somebody that comes in to help with daytime stuff. And I think there is probably a couple there right now that are having a worker come in for a couple hours a day. Typically with those, especially because these are poor people, they get, if they do need help with housekeeping or some activities of daily living, they apply through a program called in-home support services, but it's not easy to get those hours. And they dole out the hours sort of sparingly. So it is possible. We just don't know who's going to walk in our door as far as needing those kinds of things.
Okay. The only reason I'm inquiring on that is I understand how you guys have analyzed the parking situation. Just that is the only other area I could see maybe some positive flow of traffic. And I know that you mentioned you were dealing with people transferring from programs or referrals. So I just thought I'd ask on that just because I need to consider that. So thank you.
Jason.
Yeah, I had a question about, you said something about the manager of the building was going to be able to handle some of the situations better. Is he going to be kind of like a specialized person, or is just like just a typical property manager? I managed property before, and with special needs, you're going to have kind of a different set of issues that may need to be taken care of. Is this more geared towards an assisted living situation where the property manager is going to be more hands-on in day-to-day situations?
I would say no, it's not assisted living. They would be there to assist with any kind of an emergency or an issue that would possibly come up. I mean, in some respects, the bottom line is that under state law, properties that are under 16 units do not have to have any kind of manager on site. As soon as you hit 16 units, you have to have, but the state law gives a lot of flexibility. It could be a caretaker, it could be a housekeeper. So, and we haven't had any discussion in-house about what the profile of this person might be, but it is not assisted living, and we would not anticipate that. There could be some help with service coordination that from time to time they could help with. If somebody in transportation service might be a good example of that, where they help arrange something for somebody. But it is absolutely independent living.
Okay. And then the other question I had is you said something about deed restriction it currently is not deed restricted?
That's
And-
correct. Currently, it's currently, from technically, it could be a market property. We're operating it as an affordable, and so once if this gets approved and we're able to build it, then a deed restriction would get recorded for 55 years, guaranteeing it's a permanent affordable housing.
Okay.
So is that a condition of approval for us, or is that's something that's automatic through your process, or how is that done?
Good question. Well, I think a condition on, I'll refer back to Mariah a little bit, but I was just going to say, because of the density bonus, that's going to, that would, I guess what we would ask for is maybe, we're typically the condition gets placed on by our financing sources, because we can't build this and rent it at affordable rents with just regular bank financing. So we're going to have to go get the traditional affordable housing, and it's at that point that they highly regulate the rents and the incomes and the affordability.
Yeah, so staff would recommend we
And
add
Scott?
that as a condition as part of the motion, just to clarify that and ensure that the concessions that we're granting are linked to the affordability of the project.
Yeah, one of my concerns would be that if it wasn't deed restricted, and sometime in the future they could sell it, and we only have 15 parking spaces in something market rate place. So.
Yeah, that's a good point. And you should, and we would expect you to put something on there, just because by virtue of granting that density bonus, so that you'd be granting something and then we'd be giving something, which would be putting it into this affordable housing program.
I have a question too, Scott. Yeah, this is Chairperson Kranza. It's around when I talked to, I think it was Mike earlier. So it doesn't say anything in the staff report, but are we talking how affordable? Because it was my understanding after talking with them that this is extremely low income, to the point where the title Section 8 came up. So, but that's not in our packet or anything. So I wondered if you could speak to that as far as how we would count that for, I think it's RHNA. Can't think of the
Okay.
acronym right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this would be counted. I'm anticipating, I guess what I would ask you tonight, if you're going to restrict it, is to not restrict it. We're fine with restricting it to low and very low income. That's absolutely fine. Within that, there's some subcategories within those.
Right.
And we'd like to have some flexibility on those, because we don't know where we're going to get all the financing from it. And they might say, hey, we got to have, this or that. But we know that everybody's going to be at 80% or below that, which is 80% is considered the low income. 80% of median income is considered low income, and 50% of median income is considered very low.
Okay, because I would be a proponent of looking at not exclusively everything being extremely low, but a certain amount of it being that, just because this opportunity does not come up very often, I don't think.
Yeah, I agree. And there's this whole thing, this idea of missing middle housing and so on. There's a ton of need out there. There's a ton of need. What happens sometimes is that sometimes the affordable rents that are set, they're still not affordable to some people. So, and that might be where the Section 8 comes in, that if they happen to have, so Section 8 generally is a tenant-based program. It's a portable voucher. So if they happen to have one of those vouchers and they still can't afford whatever our affordable rent is, they can take that voucher and it'll pay a portion of that rent on their behalf. That's how that works. So some of the extremely lows, they might have a hard time paying the basic rent, but a lot of those will have those vouchers that they can use that will pay it on their behalf.
But I do understand it would pigeonhole to financing if it was specifically, it has to be Section 8, you're like, please don't do that to us. I hear you. So
okay.
And I do just want to
Kelly,
say, Victoria, in terms of our RENA numbers, the state has a separate category for extremely low. But in terms of our RENA numbers, those just get grouped into the very low. So we
Okay.
don't yet have separate.
We don't have to get in the weeds
divided
then on that.
streams low.
Okay. Yeah.
Any other questions for the applicant?
One more question, and this is just speculation. I know you can't answer it definitively, but the people that would be increasing your tenant base, would they be locally, like people who can't get housing now, or would they possibly be coming from outside the area because this is now available? Because it is a kind of, looks like you're gearing it towards a special needs niche market. And with low income housing, I look at it as our locals need housing that they can afford, so they're not coming from outside the area.
We always have a, it's always local. We always provide what we call a local preference. So we advertise and do outreach, and it always fills up with local. Now, how local gets defined, people move around so much. So our, first preference would be a Atascadero, but then you have, somebody who's living in Templeton, but they grew up their whole life and went to a Atascadero high school. So are they considered local? But we always have local preferences on all, and that's what we would do on this one as well.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions?
Oh, I just had one. This is a joke about the weeds here, but I actually wanted to ask about the weeds. The landscaping behind the building. I was just curious. It said invasive species removal, and since we don't really know much about that at all, I just wondered if that was like something that the city should put on their radar as like an issue in general. But what kind of invasive species would you be removing?
I'm not 100% sure. It was the landscape architect who did that.
Okay.
So I don't have names or anything, but I think the idea is just to clean up
Okay.
the site.
Okay, thank you. Well, we'll go ahead and open it up to the public. Beforehand, we received a couple letters. Annette, can we have those read into the record?
Yes, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so the first one here is from Robert Bass, and it says, "Dear Planning Commission folks, first I want to point out that I respect the work of this commission for our wonderful city of Atascadero. I have lived here in the same apartment at 5880 Ardea Avenue, Atascadero Unit A since February 1992, almost 30 years. I love our city and our people, and because I am a follower of Jesus Christ, I am to honor with authenticity the authority over me, which includes city government and planning. I just want you folks to know I don't come with an axe to grind. So here are my serious concerns. Both the driveway and the blind corner at the bottom of the driveway are serious safety concerns if you are driving a car. If you are a pedestrian or in a wheelchair, such as myself, this driveway blind corner is always super safety concern. In 2011, I happened to have been driving my van equipped for wheelchair down the driveway, of course, looking both ways as usual, and creeped out as I do to see better around the blind corner. And bam, I was what they call T-jackknifed by a car speedily rounding the bend. Luckily, that car that hit me farther in the back of the van and not the driver's seat area, but I still suffered head injury and concussion and was transferred to Twin Cities by ambulance. If I had been in my wheelchair and for whatever reason, not hugging against the bushes as I normally do, I would surely be dead now. This whole driveway blind corner is a death trap waiting to happen. Mark my words. And I am 1000% against adding more units and more people to an already super unsafe. There is zero safe lighting for that area at night, so it is so dark at night. I have gone off into bushes on the right side in my electric wheelchair because it is so dark I could not see where I was going at all. I got stuck and could not get out. Unfortunately, one of my Good Samaritan neighbors just happened to be driving by, saw me waving from the bushes and pulled me out. The whole area is so unsafe. If the city does not aggressively make that area safe with stop signs and lighting, there will be more serious bodily injury or death. It's death waiting to happen. If I could be more than 100% against adding more units, I would. First, make the area safe for current residents. Many pedestrians walk up that driveway and it's so dark. People fly up the driveway too, like it's a speedway at times. Also, you all understand the picture I am trying to paint. Thank you for your consideration in this matter. I stand with authority of our city government, and I hope and pray adding units to an already very unsafe area will be declined. Sincerely, Robert Bass, 62-year-old grandfather, father, and husband, and resident close to 30 years of beautiful Atascadero. Second letter is from Michael Norlock, and it says, please note, this proposal is marked for 5880 Ardea Road, although that address does not exist. It is actually 5880 Ardea Avenue. There are two different streets. In addition, the community building is fraudulently misleading, as it is not going to be available to the Atascadero community, but rather the proposed building residents only. The proposal presents numerous safety and well-being issues that will greatly impact the area that surround this project. Within approximately 100 yards of the project entrance lies the following: 3 residential driveways, 2 church entrances and exits, freeway off-ramp, freeway on-ramp, the convergence of 3 major Atascadero roads, Ardea Avenue, Traffic Way, and Santa Lucia Avenue. This is within 100 yards of this proposal. This convergence is currently hazardous. Monday through Friday, it is the major thoroughfare to Atascadero High School, as well as Saturday and Sunday St. William's Church services. This project will unquestionably increase the difficulty of traversing this area. The much needed and well done renovation projects in the immediate downtown area has already noticeably increased the congestion and traffic in the area, and it simply cannot safely support additional hazards. How will the current proposed 15 parking spaces accommodate 146% increase in traffic, 13 to 32 sites? The proposal suggests that 1/2 of the residents will be driving, although there is absolutely zero data on the actual number of drivers that could live there. The 20-year-old traffic assessment fails to account for the increased traffic at this site. This proposal hinders an increasingly dangerous area and seeks to add to that without forethought of consequences to those that travel and live in that area. The site does not and cannot accommodate the vehicle needs of the residents, and there isn't any current studies to suggest otherwise. Additionally, city services must be considered. The approach, curvature of the driveway, and its steep angle do not meet Atascadero's current building codes and are insufficient for providing emergency services. In conclusion, the proposal does more harm to Atascadero and its residents than the additional housing would benefit. Thank you, Michael Norlock. And that's all we have.
Thank you. Okay, well, we're gonna open it up to the public. Tori, if you could hold your,
It's actually about that letter. Was there, I don't know if I missed it. Was there any information on who that guy was, like where he lives or why he's commenting on this? Did he just not say it or did I miss it?
He is a neighbor.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
so we'll open up to the anybody that's online, the public. And if you would like to speak, if you could raise your hand and recognized. Looks like Greg Rabat is on there.
Oh, hi, everybody. Greg Rabat over on Rosario.
Hi, Greg.
So I'm directly under the bridge from this property. And, you know, I'm pretty familiar with downtown. I'm downtown every day on Traffic Way and over on Ardea and El Camino. And so I don't have a problem with this project per se. I actually I'm in favor of increasing density for affordable housing, especially special needs housing. We got a few special needs housing projects. Are not necessarily state set aside affordable, but we do have several in the area, and we were glad to have them. I think the issue I'm having with this project, when I first got notification of this, I had to double check the site because I was really shocked that it was up on a hill and so inaccessible. And so I don't want to talk about all of the other comments or letters that you've already read are right on. I think the issues that I have are the connectability to the downtown and the transportation of the downtown. The state density bonus laws and parking reduction laws were written for semi-urban areas. And if you want to consider Atascadero a semi-urban area, that's fine. But they're all written around connecting to transportation, which is to us, buses. We don't have anything else other than buses. So we've got a bus stop, a couple right there on El Camino. This project does not connect to them. So in my mind, this does not meet the requirements for the state density bonus or the state parking reduction, because it doesn't meet the connectivity to public transportation. And I did kind of do a little chat with Kelly on that. And, I know you guys are, kind of restricted on approvals. You're almost by state law, forced to approve the project. And I think you should approve the project. I think the issue is there's just no solution other than connecting this property down to Traffic Way with either, so I don't know what it's going to be. I'm not the city engineer. It's got to be, it's got to be either, a sidewalk, which would probably be preferable, or a bike path. I don't know why necessarily a bike path would be separate, but I would say a bike path and a sidewalk. The lighting, they're right on. It's horrible. Traffic Way, this is the worst intersection in the city. You guys know that because we play chicken when we try to get on the freeway there. So I'm imagining pedestrians. I know that you're going to have a lot of services on site. You're going to have, buses picking up people, and I'm okay with that. But we got a lot of special needs. I can think of a couple if you need examples where they are walking, they are downtown, they are using the restaurants. Just because they're low income doesn't mean that they can't have pedestrian access to our downtown. We got some great restaurants right there on Traffic Way. And I'm upset that they can't walk down to them. I think it's horrible. I hope you guys can do something about it. I think it should be a requirement. So I know you have to approve the project, but I think you should relook at that sidewalk issue. You don't have to just put a sidewalk in front of this. You should put it all the way to Traffic Way. Anyway, that's my comment. I really appreciate you guys having the forum so we can share our ideas. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Do we have any other attendees that would like to speak? You can just raise your hands.
Just a reminder, if you're calling in, it looks like we do have someone on the phone. If you'd like to speak, you just press *9. That'll raise your hand.
Okay, well, it doesn't look like we have any additional commenters. So we will go ahead and close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission for some discussion or additional questions of staff. Kelly or Mariah, would you like to address any of the comments made by the letters that we received? Seemed like some of them would be taken care of by the relocation of the driveway and its approach there.
Yeah, so tonight is the first time we've seen the relocation of the driveway. So we've been drafting up kind of some additional conditions. I can put them on the screen in just a second, but one of those is to, we had talked about before, because of the locations of the driveway, a sidewalk or frontage improvements was really not feasible. But with that relocation, we want to add a condition to maybe open that discussion back up to talk to the city engineer and talk about the feasibility and what that might entail to actually have them do those frontage improvements, since it will, you know, act as a connector to at least the adjacent property, which would lead to downtown, hopefully eventually. And I can't remember, was there anything else specifically to address? That was the biggest one I can think of.
The lighting,
Yeah, the lighting.
could we add street lighting in there? Because that is a dark kind of corner at night.
Yeah, I think what we can do is add another condition that the applicant work with the city engineer on ensuring adequate lighting along Ardea Road.
I would like to see that.
I don't know the specifics of that because I don't think there are streetlights on Ardea currently. And I think that's kind of the city engineer's realm. But definitely if we add a condition that they work with the city engineer on providing adequate lighting as feasible, we can try and come up with a solution for that.
Would that fall under the visibility assessment?
Not necessarily.
In terms of the site lighting requirements?
Yeah, because the new driveway is going to need a visibility assessment anyway, right?
Yeah, the city engineer will sort of look at site distance before they sort of approve any connection to Ardea. But generally, we don't always look at lighting that goes along with that.
Okay.
Randy, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, actually, so it looks like it's going to be covered in the visibility assessment because I wanted to actually go back and make sure that we address Tori's idea as far as the tree and making sure they had visual ability not to get T-boned or injured while just trying to get to the road.
I think that tree was removed when they did the change.
Yeah,
it wasn't on the.
it looked like they were going to completely like move everything there. So I'm assuming they're probably going to make it to where it's a lot more visible. And then I mean that request though for the sidewalk, I mean that'd be in a perfect world, but I don't know if it'd be realistic to extend it that far with this one project.
Yeah, so per our code, they are required to do frontage improvements unless it's infeasible or determined, you know, not to be in a timely fashion with other improvements in the area. So we definitely can leave that up to the city engineer. The project does trigger the sidewalk, and the previous finding to not do sidewalk because the driveway and the exit location was already located as close as possible to downtown does not really exist anymore with their new proposal. So we do need to look into that further to make sure that they're meeting our code requirements.
All right. Thank you for the clarification.
And so if it does become feasible to do sidewalks, what would be the process to getting sidewalks on that other privately owned property? I mean, is that something where the city can just come in and say, hey, guess what? We're going to build sidewalks here now. Or does it have to go through a bigger process?
So the city could certainly do a project that included sidewalks in that location. I don't think it's on the city's CIP plan, and I don't think we have funding for that currently. Of course, there are grant funding opportunities, and sometimes we can use CDBG funds for things like that when they are a true connector. In terms of the property owner doing the improvements, again, we have a whole code section that requires a certain amount of improvements to be done to the property before those frontage improvements are triggered. So if it's a multifamily property, we'd probably be looking at if they decided to add 5 more units to that property, it would be triggered. But if they're just going to continue to use it as a single family property, that likely would not be triggered for the owner.
What about it being affordable housing and high density? Would that help with the grant process? The fact that we're like connecting a higher density, low income housing to the city?
It definitely could. I think as multiple residents and the applicants and staff has mentioned, that intersection with Traffic Way is very challenging. And so grant funding a pedestrian connection to an intersection that has some pedestrian challenges is probably difficult. I think In the city's ideal world, we would come up with a good solution for that intersection to make not only vehicular travel safe, but also pedestrian travel. And if we were to do a project like that in the future, it would likely include some extended pedestrian connections as well.
Okay,
Yeah,
we'll put it on the list.
Yeah, I have a question too regarding this particular discussion. I mean, yeah, bringing up the block grant idea sounds very practical to me too. I was just thinking that we have on the call Ken Litzinger, who's the finance director for the project, and I didn't know if we can call them back on at all or ask him to speak if this whole extension on traffic way idea is even something feasible, if we asked them to come back on this item and we don't approve it fully tonight, because that's a contingency we're looking for more research on.
I think we can actually condition them to do that. We can only condition them to do the frontage improvements, which is part of the municipal code.
Okay, because yeah, it definitely seems like this, while seemingly an easy one, yeah, we want to approve the project. I guess we can do that and then hope that we can, as the city, direct the staff to apply for working with the housing authority on this project for community development block grant monies to make that extension possible. Is that kind of what we can do?
Yeah, so our CDBG program is, maybe Jeff, you probably know some background too. The funds are distributed at the county level, sort of based on projects and community need and things like that. So, certainly we can reach out to our city engineer and let them know that, maybe this might be one of our priority areas. But ultimately, that the funding of projects is not up to the city. It's up to a larger blanket agency run through the county.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So yeah, but in fact, the city is doing a CDBG project on Santa Rosa and El Camino right now that I'm aware of and I'm involved in. But they have to apply for that money in the county. The county is the one that approves it, and so there's a long approval process to try to get that, and it would have to be on the city's radar. The city has a lot of these types of projects already that they're trying to get grants for. So.
Yeah, of course. And they utilize bodies like ours to bring things to the top of the packet that we see on our agendas and we go over. So yeah, I think that should be in our notes somewhere.
Yeah, there's actually, I think, a plan from early 1980s that showed a traffic circle in that location, which is probably not a bad idea. And we probably should have done it in the 80s when it was much cheaper to do.
Yeah, it's like, how do these projects, we talk about things and then I'll see the agenda approval for the next thing. And it's like, oh, we brought up a cool point that never got in the agenda. So, where do these things go?
I'd like to propose an additional condition, and one is site lighting, because we're talking about street lighting, but they're going to need site lighting along that wall so that they could see that driveway if they're in the nighttime. So I'd like to propose an additional condition that would provide site lighting for the drive as well.
There you go.
Okay.
Good call.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any other discussion by the commission, or if somebody wants to make a motion?
Did we have anything on the specific sidewalk? What's the most we can ask them for to do?
They added
Yeah, I think if we add a
condition.
condition that they work with the city engineer on, feasibility and code compliance, and for those frontage improvements, whether it be an actual sidewalk or a walkable shoulder, or maybe not anything at all based on the slope. One of the things the state law kind of ties our hands and says, we can't really enforce any sort of development standard if it makes the project infeasible. I don't really know if frontage improvements are considered a development standard. We could probably argue otherwise. But I think if we leave it a little bit flexible to make sure that we're within the guidelines of the state law, and that the city engineer is, determining exactly what is needed and what is feasible in that location, would probably be the best way to write a condition.
Would anybody like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion. I propose to approve the plan with the 4 proposed conditions listed here, and then also to add a condition for site lighting to make sure that the site and the driveway in particular is properly lit for safety. And does that cover it, Jeff?
Is that clear enough, Kelly and Mariah, for you?
Yes.
Okay.
Can I get a second?
Oh, can I just clarify, and sorry, Tori, I might have missed this because you went through them really fast. Yeah, you added the condition for the city engineer to work with the applicant on frontage improvements?
Yeah, so the frontage improvements, the additional street lighting, the owner shall record a deed restriction designating the project as 100% affordable to low income households. And then also add to the applicant needs to provide us a site lighting plan to properly light the driveway and the site for safety.
Perfect.
And then Tori, does that also include the condition for the 6-foot tall fence along the eastern property line?
Yes.
Was it crucial to put very low, or are we just going low?
Well, it says affordable to low income households.
So I think the state density bonus just requires the low level. The applicant may choose to do lower level, or their funding source may require lower, and so they're always able to go lower. But this condition basically covers the requirements of the state density bonus law.
Okay. I'll second.
Okay.
We're having a little more discussion. And one thing to ask is this going to come back before the planning commission once these are done, or this approval's out of our hands after that point?
Yes, this would be the final approval level.
Yep.
Quite a few changes.
The commission could add a condition that that the condition changes be brought forward to DRC, sort of for final recommendation prior to permit issuance, if you did want some additional city level review as part of the application.
What do you think, Jeff? He's going,
I don't think so.
You don't think so? You think we?
Okay.
Okay.
Like, what should we do, Jeff?
We've done enough. Okay. I just, you got a lot of balls in the air. I'd hate to see it, kind of get muddled through.
Yeah, a couple of the conditions are for the city engineer to work with them, so I'm pretty confident that they can do that.
You got a good crew. Okay. All right. We can go ahead and vote now. Thank you.
And cookie staff. Yeah.
Annette, can you give a roll call on this?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Vice Chairperson King,
Yes.
Commissioner Carranza,
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Hughes,
Yes.
Chairperson Van den Eyck.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you, and congratulations to the applicants and Haslow, and wish you well in developing your site.
This is exciting. I love approving things like this and seeing things like this.
Yeah, it's great. Do we have any commissioner reports? Anybody? No? And our director's missing. But Kelly, do you have anything for us?
I don't have too much. I don't believe there's anything on the agenda currently scheduled for next meeting, so that meeting will likely be canceled. So now's the time to take a vacation or have a baby should you need to. I don't really have anything else other than to say, Ancient Owl has been open downtown for a few weeks now, and they've been really busy almost every night of the week. And I believe Negranti Ice Cream kind of had their soft opening and is serving ice cream out there as well. And I also saw food being delivered from Colony Market and Deli over to Ancient Owls. So I think that their joint venture in food ordering is getting up and running as well. I think Colony Market and Deli will be open a little bit later in the evenings with their pizza oven. So I think it's a good summer to go hang out downtown a little bit more and support all those local businesses.
I had a
Has there been any
question for
movement-
staff.
Oh.
Oh,
Sure.
it was around the Del Rio project you remember a while back when we met and we talked about that project, we advised, and then the city council approved. Yeah, well, how is it going with the temporary use?
So we met with the applicants today, and they should be submitting their temporary use, conditional use permit within the next few days. We expect that to come in. When the council approved the temporary use language for the specific plan, they did request that CUP application get reviewed and approved by the city council. So that will likely be going to the council for review and approval. They also have to do master plans of development for each additional phase. And so the Planning Commission at some point will see each of those phases come through in greater detail for review and approval. But they are working on the site and getting their plans ready for their temporary use, as well as getting plans ready for their phases of development, because they truly do see the interim use as being there while they are permitting and constructing their other phases. So they're hoping to move very quickly with the project.
Hey, Kelly, has there been any movement on that repair shop behind Clem's?
I believe that there has been a lease agreement signed there on that property next to our plaza. I don't know if we're at liberty to say yet, but it's not an automotive use. So it will be more of sort of a retail type space. And so that kind of is good news for how that plaza is going to function.
Great. Great news. Well, thank you, everybody. Appreciate you all being here. Looks like we have a little break, and we'll probably reconvene at the end of August sometime. So thank you very much. We'll go ahead and adjourn our meeting until next time.
Thank you, Jeff.
See y'all later.
Bye.
Everybody.
Thanks, Jeff. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Have a good
Yeah.
night.
Thanks.